Yeah, I know that place.
Hi, welcome to Bourne Calling. I'm Skip Barlow, and our subject tonight is going to be aquaculture. And I'm here, I've got Bruce Silverbrand's here tonight. He's got Buttermilk Bay Oyster Farm up in Buttermilk Bay, and we're going to talk a lot about nutrients and growing oysters and all the trials and tribulations that go with being your own oyster grower. So, welcome, Bruce.
Thank you, Skip. Good evening.
Good evening. So tell us a little bit about your operation. You don't have to tell us a whole bunch. We don't want to know how much money you make. But how does it work, you know? And then when are you going to make some money anyway?
Well,
Not teasing.
hopefully now the pandemic's open, we go back to
I know.
normal.
Had a
you know?
tough year.
Oh, yeah, it was bad, the pandemic, and thank God for the Nature's Conservancy, who we've done a lot of work with in the past. The SWARS program is saving a lot of oyster farmers that are out there.
Yeah.
Not only, myself included, but a lot of guys all over the East Coast and the West Coast. The pandemic was quite a challenge after, it takes 3 to 4 years to get on your feet in the oyster business.
Yeah.
By the time you get the gear and get all the oysters and get a running stock going. And we were just at that point where we were starting to make some real money. And after investing, you don't even want to know, a lot of money and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It's not an easy job. But that being said, we love it, and it does something good. Having been a shell fisherman my whole life, I feel it's good to give back. Because as a shell fisherman, we take, and we go out and rake shellfish up and take them. And
Yeah.
so with the oysters giving back, not only do they spat out and proliferate seed around the bay, we're also getting into the water cleaning factor of it. So it's very rewarding, to say the least.
Yeah, and but Bourne 100 years ago had a lot of oyster grants. And when they dug the canal, they wiped most of them out. And all those guys, they all sued the canal company, and they did get reimbursed.
That's correct.
But they never got their grants back.
Before they opened the channel to the canal, Hog Island went all the way over to Onset, to the mainland, and there were farms all along, all the way from Mashney Island Dike, all the way along and down the Wareham, coast of Wareham. And like you said, when they dug the canal, the silt was too much, and it finally choked out the oysters.
Yeah.
I didn't know that the farmers had been reimbursed, but which is good to hear.
Well, some of them did. They had to go to court and ended up in federal court. They actually, Henshaw in Buzzards Bay was one of the big ones, and he did okay. He got reimbursed pretty good. Not everybody got reimbursed.
Yeah.
Taylor family had oyster grants all around Taylor's Point, and they might have got reimbursed, but nobody knew. But they owned the Boston Globe or something, so they weren't worried.
Yeah,
about
they weren't too worried about it. Yeah,
No.
exactly.
Yeah, but you're really high tech compared to what it used to be almost a put and take thing where they'd get small seed from the rivers and estuaries and they transplant it to their leases and grow them out. You're way past that.
Oh yeah, we're way past past that. I wish that we could go and take seed from the estuaries and rivers and use
Yeah.
it, but nowadays we buy the seed from from aquaculturists who are biologists also, and they raise the seed up to a certain size. We usually get 6 to 8 millimeter, which is about half of that pinky nail, or we get 9 to 13, which is probably a pinky nail basically.
Yeah.
And we have cages that have slots in them, and we take bags, and the bags have a different size mesh. We start out in real small mesh, 4 mil, so they don't fall through and get out. And then we go all the way up to 13 or 18 mil, depending on what we're doing. With us, we try to plant them on the bottom so they're more of a natural oyster. We let them grow in the bags for the first year, and then come December, we spread them all out on the bottom. The bad thing is we have to go out and rake them all up or drag them up again. But the good thing is you get a much better oyster, we think,
Yeah.
a free range oyster, if you will.
Yeah, and they're a little deeper.
Oh, they get a much better cup on them.
Yeah.
They
yeah,
really
so-
do.
Yeah, they're a
You
lot
know,
better looking.
They don't
oyster.
get that long, you get more of a long oyster in the bag.
Yeah.
Our oysters are a little more rounded, and they got a beautiful cup on them, you know.
Yeah, even though they consume so many nutrients in the water and they don't, and algae, you still gotta clean the bags all the time, because they get
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of
Oh,
nutrients
yeah.
growing on them.
That's another reason we went to just planting them on the bottom, was
Yeah.
because the amount of labor involved is, you know, you think, oh, you're growing oysters, well, we're growing 200,000 or 300,000 at a whack. The labor involved to clean those bags, because every week you have to go out, stand the cage up, pull the bags out. You use the cage as a table, and you put the bag on there and you scrub both sides of it, then you shake it in the water, and then you put it back in its hole, and then you do the other 7 bags, and then you go to the next cage, and the next cage. Last year we had 47 cages in the water,
Wow.
and we had 50 floating bags, and this year will be 200 floating bags and 40 cages. We didn't order as heavy this year like we were gonna because of the pandemic, and it looks like things are starting to straighten out, but, you know, we didn't wanna have too much abundance laying
Yeah.
around.
The whole fishery kind of messed up right now. I mean, even Maine and Canada, they're producing way more clams than anybody can take.
Yeah.
Because the restaurants really haven't caught up with it yet. So, but the price is still high.
Oh, yeah.
The price is really high, and the shucking houses are dealing with it as they can.
Well, the oyster market is just starting to come back right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't been selling any oysters until, you know, we're planning on going online right now. I've got some phone calls from some people, and the prices come up. Not way up, but it's come up.
It should
you know.
take off in the next month or two, I hope.
Yeah, exactly, that's
Yeah.
what we're hoping to. And, I think that one of the biggest problems, though, is restaurants are gonna open back up, but people don't realize a lot of restaurants closed. They're not there anymore.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, just from the restaurant side of it, when they're opening back up, it's hard for the restaurant suppliers to get enough product to open the restaurants, because it's just not there. Cooking oil,
Yeah, it's not just the shellfish,
no,
exactly.
yeah, it's the paper
Exactly.
goods, everything's not there. Nobody's producing what they need yet.
Well, it's all the way around the gamut. You and I
Yeah.
were talking, I had to go to Virginia to buy a boat motor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane, you know? If you told me that a year ago, I would've laughed at you, but,
I know,
it's-
everything's changed.
yeah, it has.
Yeah.
But, I mean, hopefully the oyster market will bounce back, you know? Thank God for the Conservancy, which I touched on before.
Yeah,
The Nature's Conservancy is a global company, nonprofit, and they are in 220 countries. They're not brand new, they've been around 60 years, 60-plus years. I was asked to survey some sites for them 5 years ago to see what would be most suitable for oyster reef restoration, which is what SOAR stands for. And we went out and picked some areas, and eventually they got back and said, you know what, you're kind of right in the middle of both areas. Would you grow 300,000 oysters for us? You know, and we will pay you and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so that's how I began my relationship with the Conservancy. We grew 300,000 spat on shell, and in the end, it was probably more like 400,000. And when they were finally mature in December, we put them all on my barge and brought them up and dumped them on the reef sites.
Yeah.
And there they can do their good, their magic, you know, they're cleaning the water and spatting out and providing more.
yeah, and, the more of that happens, the better. I mean, in the past, the town used, years ago, the town would buy oysters out of Connecticut, because Connecticut was a huge amount of oysters, and they'd
Yeah.
transplant them here, and, it was kind of a put and take thing, but it would clean the water up. And then people would have oysters to harvest, and they'd be gone. And, like you say, the Nature Conservancy is
Well,
really,
the town of Bourne itself now does similar to what I do. They grow them in bags.
yeah,
And when they get big enough, they put them out. And they're out for the residential people. And so they still do something similar.
yeah,
But as far as Connecticut now, I don't know how long ago they stopped doing that. But between overfishing and pollution, which are two of our big problems, that's why
Yeah.
there are not a lot of oysters left.
yeah, Connecticut, I'm gonna say 30 years ago, started doing what we have to do now, because they had nutrient problems back then.
Yeah.
And this guy, Dr. Tim Weissel, who was associated with Barnstable County, and he opened some schools down. He was the head of the vocational school system, and he ran the oyster program, and they used it to clean up a lot of their rivers. They had just huge nitrogen problems. And
Yeah.
like you say, they consume a lot of nutrients, and they just taught kids to grow oysters.
Well, we have over 400,000 oysters laying on the bottom of Buttermilk Bay right now.
Yeah.
Which is 20 million gallons of water a day
Yeah.
that we filter, clean, you
Yeah.
know, which reduces the impact of, I don't know how many humans, but I believe it takes 5 bushels of oysters to clean the water impacted by one human, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't even know how many bushel that is. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's not huge when you consider how much water is in Buttermilk Bay, but on the other hand, who else is doing anything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. But even Buttermilk Bay at low tide, it's a lot of water spread thin. I mean, it looks like a big bay, but it's very shallow.
Oh, yeah, it's very shallow in the middle.
And so it's, like I said, it's a lot of water spread thin. And a lot of times, it's so much better than doing nothing. And actually, Rick York down in Mashpee, he's the shellfish warden down there. He's been doing this now he's been the shellfish warden there for 30 years. But he came from Hawaii. He went to school in Hawaii. He learned a lot about, aquaculture there and brought it here. And he does a lot of work similar to what, it's mostly Native Americans that have grants down there. And
Yeah.
they get funding through the tribe. But they're doing exactly what you're doing. And they're cleaning up the harbor.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has an impact.
I mean, you're not just the only one doing this. There's other guys
No.
doing it too.
Well, we have Pitsley, who's from Wareham. He's right
Yeah.
out in front, across from the Beachmore, the old Beachmore. And there are other guys in Bourne doing it too,
Yeah, and Pitsley's got I believe he's got over 20 acres.
30.
He's got 30 now,
acres.
yeah. It was around
But some
28.
of it's not really usable. He's got a whole big mud patch in there. But,
Yeah.
we were contacted by somebody that wanted to back us to grow kelp. And so I did some research on the kelp thing. And the town of Bourne should understand this is a great opportunity. Everybody's worried about sewer systems and this and nitrogen from lawns. The kelp takes 60% of the nitrogen right out of the water. And it's a great thing because it goes in October. You hang a wire, you put some kelp on it. You have to go out once a month and check it. And then when May comes around, boating season again, it all comes out because that's its growing season during the winter. And it's not commercially viable yet, as far as like me doing it on my
Yeah.
grant, but it could be in the future. And it just goes to show you some of the things that are grown in the water can do a tremendous amount of good. It's something our town leaders should look at in the future, the kelp thing, because it's really very cost effective. You're not talking about a lot of labor and you're not talking about a lot of money. And, if you could do some in Buttermilk Bay, some in Hens Cove, and some in Squetique Harbor, I think, it would be a great idea for the town.
Yeah,
As we face the pressures of everyday life in the ocean.
It was funny, the selectmen, when Barry Johnson was a selectman, we're gonna talk back in the 70s now, right?
Yep.
They have a Massachusetts State Officers, Shellfish Officers Association, and they would work with the County Selectmen's Association to develop fisheries and do different things. It doesn't happen anymore. It's too bad. The communication's not there. But, they still have the associations, but they're not working together anymore like they used to. And if they got working together, they could share a lot of the stuff like the kelp information.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that kelp
Yeah.
was so good for the ocean, for pulling nitrogen out of the ocean. I just happened to, when these people approached me and I did a little study,
Yeah.
a little homework, I started to say, it's not for me right now because of the commercial viability, but what a great thing the town could do. Throw a few mooring balls out in the channel. Nobody's out there from October till May anyways. And grow kelp on ropes,
Yeah,
And then when you're done, you haul it all out, bring it over to the dump, and if anybody wants seaweed for their garden, there you go. Or just put it in the pile and let it become compost. You
Yeah.
know? And it's something. It's going to take many little parts to help the big part. If you
Yeah,
understand
but
what I'm saying.
yeah, I do, and they're gonna do the wastewater studies and stuff, and I don't know, they're gonna start pretty soon, but that should be part of it. It should be part of it. It should, I don't know if it will be, but it should be. It's an
Yeah.
important part of it. And anything you can do to remove the nutrients, to control it. It's,
Exactly.
I used to go to schools and talk to the kids, and it's the same thing, when you get low dissolved oxygen, it's like somebody's pulling a plug on an aquarium. It's all over. Boom. Everything's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And once you kill them, they're not there to consume anything anymore because they're gone.
Yep.
And people don't get that. You know, when you have a big algae bloom and you kill off everything,
Yeah,
everything that was eaten, it's gone.
and then it'll take another 100 years for it to come back.
Take a while.
And in our day and age, it may
Yeah.
never come back.
No,
Just because of the pressures that are put on the ocean at this very moment.
there was no significant amount of oysters in Barlow Bay till you started growing them there again. There just wasn't.
No.
There was a few little patches here and there, but you couldn't even recreational oyster in there. It just
No,
wasn't
no.
practical.
No.
You know,
We're starting to see spat now. We're not on the shoreline so much, but on some of our gear, and we're finding stuff that's this big growing on the bottom.
Yeah.
And that's coming out of my oysters. And eventually, it's gonna line the shorelines where the wind is predominant when it's, spat season.
Yeah.
Which I would say would be that north side shoreline.
Yeah.
Eventually, someday, you won't even be able to walk out there without sneakers. That would be the hope. And that stuff does its
it'll-
job,
yes.
you know?
It'll come, it will catch, and when, the town started putting it up by the conservation area up in Little Buttermilk Bay, I wanna say 10 years ago. Warnocky and John Thompson were planting oysters up there from the town, from the upwellers in Moyant Beach. And they had a pretty good crop in there. There were quite a few recreational oyster fishermen fishing in there for a while.
Yeah.
And now things have changed a little bit, and Tim Mullins was really kind of behind that. I don't know about the new, Chris is good, but I don't know if he's doing exactly the same programs that Tim was doing.
Well, once again, with the pandemic,
Yeah, you don't
hardly
know.
had any contact with Chris at all.
No,
You know,
you can't.
he's a great guy, and hopefully moving forward, we're gonna be able to do
Yeah.
some things similar to this. And as soon as town hall opens, I wanna bring up the kelp thing to him, because
Yeah,
I think it's a no-brainer. It's not very expensive at all, especially in this day and age where things cost a lot of money to do anything. This is, a couple
Yeah.
mooring balls, a mile of rope, and
Yeah.
and a few hours every month to go out and check on it. I mean,
yeah,
and the good that it does, If people wanna keep recreating in our ocean,
you gotta take care of it.
yeah, you gotta take care of it. And everybody says, oh, yeah, it's not gonna affect me, it's not gonna affect me. Well, it will. It will.
Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah, it will.
if we start having red tides again, and we had them in the early 70s, and we pretty much got it resolved. If we start having red tides again, people don't understand that it burns your eyes. You can live a quarter mile away from the water, and it burns your eyes. You can't.
Yep.
It kind of affects your property value because nobody wants to live there. They've got this whole problem on the east coast of Florida now.
Oh, yeah, down at
People
Florida,
are walking away from their homes.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's just really bad.
Yeah.
We don't need that here. We don't want that here.
No, and there's no need to have it here.
There isn't.
No,
There
there
really isn't.
And in Buttermilk Bay in general, even in the Wareham side, the people have been great. We've been well received.
Yeah.
There's always a few that, my ocean, what are you doing out here? But, Buttermilk Bay is 425 acres, Buttermilk Bay proper,
Yeah.
and almost all of it's in Bourne. Probably 50 or 60 acres is in Wareham.
Yeah. Very little.
And, it's a great bay, but if we don't take care of it, you're not gonna be able, you won't wanna go out and use it.
Yeah, people don't have a night. They look at Buttermilk Bay. It's a great big place, but that middle of that bay is only a foot deep at low tide.
Oh, yeah, well,
You know?
you should see when we're out there working on the grant and the jet skis go by and
Yeah.
we're standing in 6 inches of water, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's a
You
big
know?
bar in the middle of the bay. The rest of like Finney's Harbor's not that way. A little bay.
No,
But
no, there's not
Buttermilk
many.
Bay's got that.
Squatigue is the only one I can think of with a big sandbar like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Right when you go in.
But Squatigue's a small harbor. It's a little puddle compared to,
Yeah, it is.
Buttermilk Bay.
And they work really hard. The people that live around Squatigue are much more environmentally prone than any other village in town. They pick up after the dogs. They've been doing it before anybody else even knew you should.
Well, They suffered a seasonal closure themselves.
Oh, they still got it, yeah.
Yeah, you can't, that was a place where I used to spend a lot of summers, co-logging.
Yeah, well, that's mostly because it's upstream from all those moorings in Magansett. And that was part of that federal mandate years ago that they're starting to implement now. They're trying
Yeah,
to.
it's coming back
But they
right now.
implemented it in Magansett.
Yep.
They implemented it there because there was so many big boats moored right where the channel came in, and they implemented it there. And it's a potential contamination thing. And there were a few other places in Massachusetts that they had to do it. They had to. It was a federal
Well,
requirement.
I don't know what the townspeople know about all this, but that FDA Clean Water Act,
Yeah.
you won't be shellfishing in much more of this town. A lot of it's gonna be closed. All those moorings, I mean, they haven't made a decision yet, but Red Brook Harbor, Hens Cove, Finney's Harbor will all be closed. You won't be able to go anywhere near them.
Yeah, what's happening, as you know, the management of marine fisheries has changed some in the last few years. This fellow Mike Hickey and another fellow named Jim Fair,
Both retired,
both retired. They
staunch defenders of our ocean.
yeah, and of Massachusetts and of our shell fishery, and they would go to the national convention every year, and they would argue why we didn't have to follow the same rules as, say, South Carolina or Florida or North Carolina, and they kept a lot of our area open because it was deeper and it was colder water and
Yeah,
a whole bunch of things that were true.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame from down
Yeah.
there to here.
Yeah, and
You know?
we didn't have a lot of wastewater going into it, stuff like that. And those guys retired, and I don't think the people that took their place, I knew these guys, knew Mike Hickey and Jim Fair. You know,
Well,
they wouldn't give it up.
Well, the FDA is coming to survey our
Yeah.
mooring fields in the next few months.
Yeah, that's going to make a
So
big
that-
difference.
You got trouble coming, you know?
Yeah,
People don't realize, everybody loves their boat, but if you like your shellfishing,
I believe it's
Yeah.
once every 10 years, the state actually, state marine fisheries employees walk the shoreline of every town in the state that has an open shell fishery.
Really?
They actually wash it, and they do it at low tide, and they're looking for
Well, they
washing
won't-
machines or
Well,
anything
with
that's
the with the
unusual.
mooring thing now, they won't have to walk far.
Yeah, but it's pretty scary in your business.
Well, luckily for us, we're far enough away, at least by their guidelines now.
Yep.
And the fact that Buttermilk Bay has 2 bridges, we can't get any, there's no big boats in Buttermilk Bay.
No.
You know, there's 1 or 2 that are, got low slot, but they have docks, they don't sit in the water even.
Yeah.
The guy has the dock that picks it up out of the water up there in the back corner,
Yeah,
but, you know.
but they can't get in and out of there.
See, but normal people that aren't involved in the fishery or the ocean part of it, they don't understand what's going on out there, you know?
Oh, I know.
The tide is changing, and it's not gonna be for the better, you know? The mooring thing is bad news. It's
Yeah, well, I
bad
know.
news.
Yeah, it's not just here, it's everywhere, and it.
Oh, no, it's the
not
whole
just
state, the whole
affecting-
state of Massachusetts is gonna get it, yeah. It's
Yeah.
not just Bourne or Cape, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Southeast, all of Massachusetts, from Hull all the way to Dartmouth, you know? But it is what it is. Hopefully, we can soften their view on it and change what they're doing a little bit,
Yeah.
so that everybody can get along.
Well, I know that there are younger guys in marine fisheries who, if they have the opportunity to get involved and fight for the fishermen and fight for the towns, because it's not just the fishermen, it's the whole town. It's a recreational fishery and a
Yeah,
commercial
yeah,
fishery.
that's what I'm saying.
It's everybody,
I'm not talking about
You know.
us guys, I'm talking about
The whole thing.
Commercial fishermen, I'm talking
the whole thing.
residential. If you like cohogging,
Yeah,
you better start talking to your legislator right now,
yeah,
because they are gonna take it all. You won't, I don't know if this ban is during the winter too, the off months, but I know it's gonna be, it'll definitely be from April till November, at the very least.
yeah.
You won't be able to go cohogging, and the few spots that are left, everybody will be there, so it'll be over quick, you know?
I know when you look at the big picture, they coming up from New York City, the state of Connecticut went first. They just about closed that whole thing right off 30 years ago. And then you get into Rhode Island, and those guys really fought and kept stuff open. Massachusetts, they kept stuff open. And of course, Maine's kept stuff open. But south of Connecticut, it's a disaster, you know? And I don't mean it's a disaster because of anything in particular, other than they've overregulated it.
Yeah,
They regulated everybody right out.
yeah, well, that's what they're gonna do to us too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not so much the grant, but for some farms, like up in Duxbury, where they have farms in, the farms, the mooring field surrounds where they grow.
Yeah.
And then they plant them in a different area, but what's gonna happen with that, you know? You're talking a lot of people and their livelihoods, you know? But,
They are, and they're just finding out. They're finding out, if it's not like a field. If you put something in the ocean, it goes a long ways. You know, I mean, they have impacts in Barnstable from the sewer outfall in Boston. I mean, that's a huge area
yeah,
when you think about it. And the area off,
yeah,
what they used to call Billinsgate and all that area, and all the fingers out in front of Barnstable.
well,
That's-
Wellfleet, Truro, P-Town, they figured they'd all be affected by it at this point, and they really haven't been yet, but it's
Yeah,
coming, it's
yeah.
coming.
Well, Barnstable
But
has.
Boston's more important than the Cape, you know, that's what it comes down to. You know,
Yeah.
that was this dilution is the solution, pump it into the ocean,
Yeah,
it's not the solution.
They didn't do the dye test first, and they didn't do it in Wareham either. When they first put the Wareham sewer plant online, if they'd had a clue what they were doing, what they were going to impact, they would have put it somewhere else, but they didn't. It just didn't happen at that time.
You know, they
And,
just passed it right through, and
Yeah, and
it's a great idea, and there it is. And
Yeah.
now they got a dead estuary, and now they gotta do something else. They got a whole new set of problems.
they do, and Marion's got other problems, but they all have these major problems with their soil plants. And Plymouth right now has
Well,
got
you-
huge problems.
It's funny you would say Marion. A few years ago, sometimes during the winter, I'll go out and build houses.
Yeah,
And we were building a big house on the old Converse property, right on the bay. And on the inside of that bay is their outfall pipe. And so I went down with my hammer at lunch one day, and I was digging in the rocks, and the quahogs are blue. They're blue,
Wow.
they're blue as the curtains in this room.
wow.
I was like, I've never seen a blue quahog before. Toss that right back in.
Yeah, I bet. He maybe kept it, see if they glow in the dark.
And I probably did.
Yeah.
Well, that place was closed, that cove, that whole area.
Is that
was
that
closed.
Clove?
I
over
don't
there?
know, I don't know what the name of the cove
Yeah,
is, but
yeah, they had big problems over there. And it was,
Yeah.
and they still are having problems. They,
we're gonna continue
Yeah.
to. That's just, you know, it's not the answer, really.
well, it was funny. They were going to sewer the whole town, and they got maybe a couple hundred houses on it, and they realized it wasn't working. And they're stuck with this thing. You know, the people all filled their septics in, and they've got a sewer plant, and they've got everything, and they know,
It's not working right.
yeah, they're in big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so because they can't handle as much wastewater coming, so they started digging pits to hold it. 1,000,000-gallon pits. You know, I think they built 4 of them before they realized they should have lined them, and that became a big problem.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
Afterthought, right?
yeah. You know, I mean, we got a double-line landfill. You
Yeah,
know, this
exactly.
is hot. It's
So
not
it
high
won't-
tech,
so it
but you
won't
know,
reach into the canal. That's why
Right.
they did that.
yeah. I mean, so what's going on? You
Yeah,
know,
well,
the
see-
DEP wants you to do this here, but over there it didn't happen.
Well, the seaside communities need to take the reins in their own hands.
They do. They got to
You know,
do something
It's a
different.
special place, and it won't stay special if we don't take care of it.
Yeah, we got to look at different options, and I think that's what that new wastewater group's going to look at and study. They're going to have to look at other options other than dumping in the ocean or continuing with Title V systems.
That's why I brought up the kelp thing. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's a good-
cheap, effective way to do it. And then and when May comes, it's all gone, nobody can see it.
No.
And then come fall in October, you go drop it in the water again, do the same thing.
You could put it all at the landfill. The people would stand in line to get it for compost for the garden.
And
They would.
I mean, if you really wanted to make an effect, you could really drop some, you could run a lot of rope and a lot of buoys pretty easily.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know, once again,
Rope's cheap.
yeah, rope's cheap.
It's not like anybody's
And-
out there scalding in the winter because that's all done.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, the whole oyster thing's been great. It's a lot of hard work. Coming from a bull raking background, like I do, I thought it was gonna be easy. But it's almost as much work as bull raking.
Actually, and you know, it's more work because you have to think about it all night. You've got all this gear out in the water, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gear out there with oysters in it. You know, when you came home with your bull rake in your boat, you knew where it was. It was out in
Yeah,
your boat.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
and you know what? Nobody steals bull rakes.
No,
No.
no, but, I mean, we have had a little theft out there.
Oh yeah.
But I have one of the people on the hill up there, we put a camera on their building that works out
Yeah.
on the grant. And also the people themselves, like I said earlier, the Buttermilk Bay people on the Bourne side and on the Wareham side, for the most part, are glad it's there. We try to keep it so it's not an eyesore, and,
Yeah.
you know, they know that something good is coming out of it. And, you know, the more oysters we plant on the bottom, the more
Yeah.
water we're gonna clean.
I watch it all the time because I live right there on the head of the bay. Every time I go up there, I see it. Every time I come down, I see it. But I enjoy the water. You know,
Yeah,
I
I do
always
too.
have. Yeah, so
I do
you
too.
so you look
To
out
do-
there to see what's
to
going
do what
on.
I'm doing right now, you have to love it. If you don't
Yeah.
love it,
It's not gonna work.
no, you're not gonna wanna do it, trust me.
Oh, I know.
That's why I have trouble getting employees. They go out there once and they're like, oh, forget it, you know, that's no
Yes.
fun.
Yeah, you got to enjoy it, and
Yeah,
it's
you
a
do.
life. It's a lifestyle. It's a good family life. It really is.
It is,
You
and,
know,
you know.
and I know your family works out there with you.
Oh, yeah, my oldest is still in school, but my youngest daughter, who's 20, I say youngest, she's, the farm boss, she's out there all the time, you know.
Yeah. We're going to run out of time, so I want to thank you for coming in and explaining to us the way of life out there. It's been really interesting, and I'm sure people really enjoy hearing it.
Anytime,
And,
Skip, anytime.
We appreciate it, and as time goes on, I'm gonna try and get Chris Southworth to come in and explain the whole DNR thing, so how it fits